description of Archduke Ferdinand, and that the Krebs cycle is a lot like a love story between two carbon molecules. Thank you, Mr. Matroni, for that one. But I have also learned, among all my other nuggets of knowledge, that people are usually afraid of silence. It is uncomfortable, and so we try to cram anything and everything into it, be it filler words or empty questions. We try to overwhelm silence, choke it, eliminate it completely if we can. Rarely does anyone let silence just be. Let her sit and fill up a room. Sometimes I feel really bad for silence because no one seems to like her very much. For those of you who don't know, I work with an organization called VIA Services. And for those of you who do know that, you know that my work is pretty much all I talk about, all I do on the weekends, and all I post about on Instagram. Whenever I try and explain my job, it gets a little complicated because my job is far from a typical one. I work with children and adults who have developmental and physical disabilities, ranging from Down syndrome to cerebral palsy to autism. It is a job I absolutely adore, as I have been working there for almost 3 years now. Each session or weekend, there is a new theme, be it Winnie the Pooh or Happy Halloween Festival. But I remember very clearly my first day of training. The director at the time told us that there will be participants who can communicate clearly and effectively, and there will be others who can't or won't speak at all. There will be participants who are completely nonverbal and non-responsive. And you can only imagine how terrified 15-year-old Hannah was. How was I supposed to know if they had used the bathroom, or they were hungry, or they were in pain? And so I worried, panicked even, at the thought of not having language as a means of communication. Well, my past almost 3 years at VIA have been filled with laughter and challenges and messes and quite frequently silence. I can retell countless stories of times when a participant and I just sat, said nothing, but just stared at each other, taking in each other's beauty and presence. One participant in particular stands out in my mind. Her name is Elizabeth, and she has Angelman syndrome. Angelman syndrome is a genetic disorder that causes developmental delays. It is also known as happy puppet syndrome because people with Angelman syndrome are just happy all of the time. If you met Elizabeth, you wouldn't help to be able to smile. Her personality is contagious. Her face lights up the room, and I look forward to the times I get to share even a moment with her. And Elizabeth is completely nonverbal. She has never spoken a word to me or anyone, and the only sound she makes is a laughter that fills the room whenever she catches a glance of you or if you make funny sounds. And another thing about Elizabeth, she loves physical contact. She will hug you and hold you and wrap herself in your arms. She will fall asleep on your shoulder and curl up beside you when she is cold. Most of the time, no matter what you are doing or where you were going, Elizabeth is content in your lap. There have been many meals in which she sat and ate in my lap, or with at least half of her body draped over me. And one night, as I waited for Elizabeth to fall asleep, as she half laid, half sat in my lap, she looked up at me and just stared. She looked into my eyes, and she just looked. So we sat in the silence of the night, completely present to each other, completely engaged and not speaking a single word to each other. We just sat, and for once, we let silence just be. Our liturgical theme song calls us to open up and share ourselves with the greater community, bring our daylight, our darkness, our secrets, our scars, and our silence. And upon hearing that, it's easy to be confused. I know I was when I first heard the song. I thought that bringing secrets and scars, our good times and our bad times, being open would unite us as a community. But what good could silence do? And then I realized it can actually do quite a lot. The Bible passage we just heard is a story of the birth of Jesus, also known as Christmas. And the story goes like so. Joseph had to travel to Bethlehem for the Roman census, which meant traveling a great distance with his very pregnant wife, Mary. And as you can imagine, they were absolutely terrified. And when they arrived in Bethlehem with Mary about to give birth, the couple could not find a single place to rest, no hotel, no inn. And so they found their way to a barn, and it was amongst the farm animals that Jesus was born. But despite every trial and obstacle, despite having to make such a strenuous journey, despite having to give birth amongst animals, nothing could have compared to the moment in which Mary first held her son in her arms. She sat with her child and her betrothed in silence, simply sitting and taking in the beauty of her family. No words had to be spoken, not a sentence shared, but a simple yet breathtaking silence as Mary looked down upon her blessed child. talk about the strength of that silence. See, like I started this talk with saying, we are all too afraid of silence. It makes us uncomfortable, scared even, just like Mary and Joseph were, just like 15-year-old Hannah was on her first day of work. The unknown is terrifying, there is no arguing that. But what lies within that silence can be an absolutely remarkable gift. And I am not saying that overcoming the distaste for silence will be easy in any means. I, like many of us, still struggle constantly. I fill my empty time with pointless sound, be it the TV or my phone. For example, and I know I'm not the only one who does this, but after I lay down to go to bed, I am on my phone for at least another half an hour before I actually decide to try to fall asleep. And that very well could be because I hate the uncomfortable silence that lingers in that time in between. It sounds sort of ridiculous, but I think it does hold some merit. Every moment of our lives must be filled. And instead of letting the silence of the night just be, I shove social media or funny YouTube videos into it. And I think that can be said for almost every moment of our lives. We must be entertained every moment of every day, constantly moving from one thing to the next. And this leaves us little, if any time at all, to not do anything, to just sit and for once let silence take over. Because like I said earlier, nobody really likes silence. They push her off to the side. They do everything to avoid her. But maybe that's because nobody really knows her. If you become more comfortable with her, you will become more aware of your own deepest feelings and desires. And guess what? Just like Mary and Joseph, in that silence we find ourselves in the midst of God. So I encourage us all to work on finding a moment or two to just sit with ourselves, to take in how we are feeling, to turn off the music, if even just for a moment, and listen to that silence. Get to know silence. Because who knows? After you get to know her, you might really like her. And once you really like her, you might be able to sit with the silence of others to allow them to unpack their hearts. They will appreciate that you can be fully present to them, not trying to fix anything, but to simply allow them to be where they're at, with or without words. People need others to help create spaces where they can feel like they can share their whole selves. Simply be aware that, like with my friend Elizabeth, when you look into the person's eyes, you are in the presence of God. So, as we celebrate this Advent season, remembering the moment God came into this world in complete silence, let us continue to work on a liturgical theme song. Bring your secrets, your scars, your glory, all that you are. Bring your daylight, bring your dark. Share your silence, and unpack your heart. Thank you.